This is VK Lakkenini with ROI Media Works, and you're listening to S.M.E Stories with Ken.
You are now listening to the next great small business podcast. Welcome to the S.M.E Stories podcast, where it is all about small businesses in Canada. And here's your host, Ken Alfred.
Hey everybody, thanks for having the show. We got a great episode today with VK Lakkenini. Now, VK is a digital marketing entrepreneur. He's also an Amazon best-selling author, technology enthusiast with a passion for marketing, strategic business growth, and operations. He's currently the CEO of ROI Media Works and the chief mindset coach at Mindset Monk. VK is passionate about helping businesses and individuals navigate everyday life using mindset skills he learned and practice over the years. So some of his accomplishments that we talked about, we saw about he's actually a 3-time Amazon best-selling author. He's also a Telly Award recipient and also a TEDx speaker. So I think today we're going to have a very interesting episode with VK, and I'm looking to hear a lot of the little nuggets that we can pass on to us, the listeners. So sit back and absorb. All right, guys, we have VK Lakkenini, ROI Media Works. VK, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing awesome, Ken. How are you?
Cold. It's starting to get cold here. It's getting cold here in Ontario. It's like single digits now, and that's degrees Celsius for my American listeners. And I'm looking forward to the first snowfall. And like we talked about on the pre-show, can't wait to use my snowblower at least once or twice this year. And that's it. I'm good. The novelty will wear off. How about you?
Oh, same here. Like we had snowstorm in Burnaby. Like my hometown is Kamloops, so snow is kind of pretty usual and got used to it. And I do enjoy the seasons, but it comes with a lot of work too, like you said. But snowblower is a great investment, by the way.
It is. And I have 2 young kids, my 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, who at this point, VK, likes shoveling. I'm waiting for them to where the novelty wears off, right? Because right now it's a new thing. And knowing my son, he's going to want to use the snow blower, which I'm not going to let him do because I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. So, aside from that, thanks for coming on the show. So, ROI Media Works, what is your story?
Well, it's a digital media agency. Basically, we help small and medium businesses with their advertising, marketing, and some PR, and also some application development where it's needed. And most of these businesses are between 5 to 20 employees, and sometimes even less than 5 employees. And what they usually miss out is the whole strategy, like knowing what really works and also catching up with the technology. I found the niche in that segment, and we work with dentists, lawyers, golf courses, some tourism companies. Like we're boutique, like we customize the strategy for each of these clients. So there's a huge difference between an agency selling packages versus what we do for our clients. And that significantly made a great difference for the last 14 years. So we've been building and adding clients year on year, and then there are some standard clients for the last 10 years. So it's been great. Like, with COVID or not, it's a new challenge, but we're still figuring a few things out with the new uncertainty. And I think a lot of business cut down those advertising budgets right away when these type of things happen. But just accommodating that and still willing to grow and still having that same hustle when you started.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. So how big of a team do you have working, running your venture right now?
At any time, we have between 3 to 5 like full-time employees and 2 contractors, and then post-COVID we had up to 11. It's just all about modifying the team as needed, and I think we start looking at profitability and what needs to be done. So as an employer, you're not legally tied up with all the responsibilities, and you just never know, right? When you let go somebody, it's hard to let go a long-term team player, but also the compensation that you have to provide. It's going to be, a big, huge compensation depending on how long they are. So in a way, COVID, gave me the opportunity to really look at it and see what can we automate, what can we really restructure, what are the things that I can do myself? Because I was kind of really doing less work because it's mostly delegated to the teams and I was just overseeing things. So I stepped back into the business a little bit, just looking at like what needed to be done, like everybody else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you were talking about like so some of these people you've had to let go, and you have a lot of contractors. So are these contractors on a per project kind of agreement, so that when a client comes on needing a specific
No,
service, you
no,
do it, or
they're full time,
are they full time? Okay.
not but not permanent, right? Like for graphic design and things like that. Like we don't do graphic design as full time, but when clients ask for it, okay, we need a branding
Okay.
package or logo, then I do have this contractor we just been working with, and they're happy with that 4 projects a month or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think for some contractors, they might like the idea of, it might be nice for them to stay full time, but like you said, if it's something that they can get a couple of projects a month out of it, so they have the flexibility to maybe flex their creativity muscle on something else, it's nice to know, right?
Yeah, like definitely what I have seen is everything is gig economy now, like especially the tools that you want to use, for example, anything to do with the social media and graphic design. When certain age groups grew up with that technology, it's easier for them to use and how to use it for business purposes or monetize it in a way as a creator, right?
Mhm.
And I think that age group loves to be a wanderlust. Like, I just want to work on this gig and I want to travel and I want to live life. That's something I have seen a huge shift in the last 5 years, even pre-COVID, which is fine. I think, we're just looking at getting the project work done and then it's up to the par and 100% client is happy. And it doesn't matter where this person is or whether it's full time or not. Um, I have even met some entrepreneurs with zero staff and having everything delegated and done overseas, and they travel full time. And I was like, that's the best way to do it, right?
I, I don't disagree with you. My kids actually are part of this podcast, actually. So when you actually hear the episode, you hear my daughter do the intro, and my
Yeah, yeah, I
son will be
heard that.
doing a few of the segments himself. And my daughter actually wants to be an entrepreneur herself. Like she's actually
Yeah,
planning on opening up a restaurant, and she's only 10. And I promised not to name the restaurant yet because she doesn't want anyone to take the name, but she definitely wants to open up something. And I was like,
right,
wow, that's great. My son, who's 8, he's like, he wants to be a teacher. I said, why? So I can tell people what to do.
right.
That's all. That's all he thought teachers do. So who to thunk? But anyways, back to ROI Media. So I guess my next question would be, you have it right now, so they're kind of like contracted some employees. Are you actually going to be getting a physical space, or are you going to keep like this remote hybrid model that a lot of people like to use?
We've been remote for almost 2 years now, 2.5 years, and we still have the office space where we meet. And there are no strategies to really do some kind of bond building and whatnot, right? Like face to face, some
Mhm.
activities. There's some new tools online, but it's different when you sit down and hang out after hours and have a beer. It's a totally different conversation than doing virtual. I think there are still some challenges there. But for me, I'm like to keep it remote as much as possible and it kind of brings the cost down too, right? Like we are in recession, we're heading into something even bigger that we haven't seen before. So how do I protect my family and also their families and making sure there's enough cash flow, right?
Mhm. Interesting. So, what's your goal for the next 5 years for your company right now? So, for ROI Media Works, what do you see in the next 5 years? What's how big you guys think you're going to get?
Like we are like six figures and we have about 120 clients and about 20% of them are recurring marketing clients. It's just all about like keeping up with the technology, right? Like it's not the same as 10 years ago. So how do I train my people and keep innovating and keep relevant in the given markets and still growing? 99% of businesses die off like after 5 years or 10 years. I don't remember the exact mark, right? That was my initial goal. Like I wanted to cross that. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and prove that. Like I had two other companies in 2010 and then in 2015 that I had to practically just early exit and kill them because I just didn't have time. So I focused on where it's needed too, right? So this is kind of like a long-term goal. And then how do I have somebody, to go and run with it, right? Like it's a brand now. People know the company. So how do you maintain it? Whether I'm here or not, in 10 years, I might sell the company, but it's still somebody taking it over and running with it, right? I mean, I already get people asking me, like, why don't you sell your clients? Because you're onto a lot of other things. And I'm like, I love working with clients. So I like to keep it that way for at least for the next 5 years.
Yeah, as long as it's fun at this point, like there's a value to it, and you're helping other people. I think why not, right? I think once you
Yeah.
get to the point where it's like it is becomes a chore, and you don't look forward to your day, okay, then maybe you want to either sell it off or whatever, right? But I just want to touch a little bit on this. So I was looking at your bio here, and you are a TEDx speaker, a three-time Amazon best-selling author. Do you want to talk about that to the
Yeah,
listeners?
for sure, for sure. I mean, like this is like 2017 onwards, right? Like I went through, a messy divorce, and then I was really looking at, I got all my boxes checked. Like, I'm so successful, and I had this, and then something didn't go well as planned. So that definitely took me on my spiritual journey to look at what's more needed, right? Even though I've been a person that's giving back to the community in the past, but that really put me into what my priorities are for myself. So I was like, I need to go and change the world. And then at the same time, I realized if I'm not the person that has the knowledge and has the mental stability to understand these things, how can I change the world, right? And I always look back at my childhood, back growing up in India and with basic necessities are not really there. And then somehow I made it all the way here. And the hope for 1 million kids, TEDx talk is about a little bit about my journey and how many other kids are suffering in the same way and what can we do about it, right? And Hope for 1 million kids is also a nonprofit that I started. Usually helps anything related to kids' education, poverty, and sex trafficking, that kind of issues. And that led me into connecting with some prominent people who author books, and I'm like, okay, I'm writing my book, but I can't put everything up by myself. So why don't we co-author a book and it's all self-published and put it out and see where it goes, right? And I think what made a difference is this book is very similar to, Chicken Soup for the Soul series type of books, right? They're different stories from people that's inspiring, and every story is unique, and there is something in it for everybody. So that really made a huge difference when it became Amazon bestselling author. All these three books, they're different. Like one on spirituality and more on gratitude, one on purely entrepreneurship, one more on the personal journey, like how perseverance really helped me to grow and nurture my skills and compete in the real world.
Yeah, we'll make sure we'll get the Amazon links on the show notes to make sure that the listeners can definitely pick up your book because that's great. It's not just one time being a best-selling author, just one time. And you got it three times here, so that means you must be doing something right in order to do this, right? So you co-authored all three books, or you kind of
Yeah,
co-authored the first one?
authored all three books, and I'm still working on my own book. And I think it's just kind of like, even though you have everything, you have that fear of like, oh, am I missing something? Is this right? Right? Like my new brand is like Mindset Monk, where it's courses and books very specifically geared towards people going through midlife crisis and trying to look at like what happened, right? And that's kind of something inspired from my own journey again, right? So I have, I think, different pillars, like, okay, connecting to my childhood struggles. This is something that can solve these problems. And looking at my midlife crisis, this is how I can solve these problems, right? And all of these are available on my personal website, lakkenini.com. Like the books are there, different products are there, my nonprofit initiatives are there as well. And I know personally when others try to write, they look at it like, do I really want to co-author? Like, it's my story. And there kind of some possessiveness and also ego kicks in and I don't want to be part of something else. It has to be me, which is fine. But I think when I'm starting over, at least for myself, nobody knows about you. Why would somebody buy a book from, VK in Canada? And this is where the other people, like one book is with Jack Canfield. Everybody knows Jack Canfield. So that kind of gave me the credibility to associate with him because I have taken his programs and I volunteered on some of his programs. So there is a bigger picture. These authors miss out and they take years and years before even they get the first book out.
Well, yeah, I think just generally writing, I think maybe people might think of, oh, maybe if I ever do a book, it'll just be that one book about my life. But when
Yeah.
you have different segments that really you can write a book about, it does take a lot of time because a lot of people, like presidents of the United States, they have their memoirs that they do at the end of their presidency, right? So to talk about
Mhm.
everything they possibly could. So interesting to talk about that. So sorry, back to ROI Media here. So we talked about that right now. So you're running basically a digital marketing firm that does a lot of different things. So for people who might want to get into that space, is there any big ticket expense that they might not that they that they should actually be aware of when they're doing it? Because for some people, they might say, "Oh yeah, I mean, I have as long as I got my laptop and a phone, I should be good." But is there anything else to run a digital marketing firm successfully?
With the firm, like I started as a programmer back in England, working for like a top five agency there, and I learned so much so quick because Google Analytics wasn't there that day. So I was programming all these tracking cookies, first party, third party. So I learned so much so quick. And then when I wanted to start my agency, this is the time when I moved to Canada from London, UK. I realized that just being a knowledge person, an expert in that one department is not good enough to be an entrepreneur. And I had to invest into my personal education on understanding finances, understanding bookkeeping, and how you actually set up systems and process, and how do you manage HR. So there was definitely a lot of upfront cost on fine-tuning the idea and putting into a business canvas model, which is very popular to use, and narrowing into, yes, it's a viable business and I can take it off. And it's a huge investment, right? Like I took at least 9 months doing market research, segmentations, and market validation. And how do you create the packages? Like at the time, we were looking at what the industry is, and we kind of moved away from packages from then. But you just got to go and look at what's market offering, and then how do you compete with it, and how do you be relevant. And when I look at the sales and when we create these services, it's a service. Like sales is a service. It's not something you're selling customer. You're solving a problem, right? Like how do you build that mindset, right? And I have mentors through the years. Like I spend like 15 to $20,000 a year just on personal development and business coaching, because at the end of the day, it all falls down to my core values in terms of integrity and truthfulness and honesty. How do I want to run my business, right? Like not every business that has a face looks and runs exactly the same. So how do I protect my core values while still getting into the entrepreneurship and maintaining that, right? So continuing education, that would be a huge expense. And the next thing is having these mentors and proper people. Like, I can't do accounting. I can look at, okay, I made this much money, but how does that look in terms of cash flow and balance sheet? I have no clue, right? So you have a bookkeeper or accountant that helps you with that, right? And then having the HR person to take care of some of these things, so you're not breaking any labor laws, right? And then
Right.
hiring the right people. So it's a combination of having the knowledge, having the right people, and keep innovating. And this comes with a lot of expenses in the first 3 to 5 years because you're still figuring it out and still want to be competitive. And then when you try to scale up, it's a different challenge. Now you have X amount of clients, let's say 30 or under, and then you're trying to scale from 30 to 100 clients, and it's totally a different ball game. And one thing that I'm a system and process guy, right? Like, I don't know if you know the SDI index. So looking at your SDI index, what kind of people do you want to be in the team, right? It has to be relevant, and somebody's picking up somebody else's trash. Basically, I don't like paperwork. It's not trash, but it's important. I just use that. But somebody else has to do it, right? So how do you create that team? And that becomes critical when you're scaling the businesses.
Yeah, and that goes back to that adage, you better hire slow but fire fast, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
have the people that's there, because employees are a very big expense, right? Like you said, not just from the compensation, all the benefits, if you offer benefits and stuff like that. And I think nowadays too, I think with the gig economy that we talked about, it's sometimes really hard to find a really good person to work with, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's because of COVID that people got comfortable with the government money coming in, that they become more picky with where they want to go. And I've heard of, thank God, some of my guests, they've told me that they've actually had people try to come up to work for them to say, hey, can you pay me in cash? I'm still getting government money, so can you still pay me in cash, or can I still do it? And thankfully, they all said, no, it's either
Yeah,
one or the
like,
other. You know?
this is where the values come in, right? Like, I know there are some restaurants, like, just employ under the table too, and it happens all the time, not just with COVID. But when it comes to whether people want to go back to work or not, um, I believe with this, how the system is structured, basically, you go to school, you get a job, and it pretty much becomes a slave to that job, right? Like 8, 10 hour days at work, you spend more time at work than with your family. And when you had that break, all these people that were doing that, all of a sudden they find their freedom, right? They realize they don't have to do that anymore. And this is where they're like, okay, I can just take a gig, work on it, and that's enough money. I'm happy with it. But I think this is where the work-life balance is kind of missing. Like, you're kind of having more fun versus work. But again, like, they will come back to the senses, okay, there's no more government money. What I'm going to do now, right? I mean, as a perfect example, right? Like, everybody's talking about Elon Musk letting go all these Twitter stuff, right? I have seen multiple times in Silicon Valley, like, I go there every 6 months just to sit down and connect with people. The employees doesn't do 100% time like many other small and medium businesses do. For example, my team, they put in like 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, depending on the workload. Same goes to a coffee shop. Same goes to Tim Hortons. But in Silicon Valley, it's not the same. You get a task, you get it done, you're good for the day because there's no more work. Because all these companies, like from Apple to Twitter, everybody just wants to retain the employees. Two reasons. So my competitor can't have them. The second reason, it might come in handy and I have surplus cash, right? So that whole culture now, Elon Musk came in and said, I'm fighting these people because, I could be wrong, but this is what I have seen from my personal experience. But there are times, like, a job can be done in an hour that's taking like 4 hours because there are four different people involved in it rather than one person got trained on the multiple levels, right? So
Mhm.
that's kind of the savings. But all these people now go back and competing with the real workforce that have been competing with them, right? And these people that had multiple hats now easily can kick their ass, basically. If
Yeah.
somebody from Twitter applies for a job, okay, you're dedicated in this one line, but this guy had multiple talent. He can do graphic design, he can do SEO, he can do content writing, he can do WordPress website development. That's a huge value for somebody hiring. So it's eye awakening at multiple levels. Like, all these people can go back and get initial training and whatnot. But it's interesting. It's one of the challenges through COVID and whatnot. But we are seeing all these people that are just coming out and trying to be productive now.
Well, yeah, that's the challenge, right? Because I mean, they were making a lot, and I don't know how, with the whole Twitter thing that's going on. I don't know how it's going to go moving forward. I don't personally use Twitter, so that's why I can't really comment too much on it. But yeah, hearing how much it's people have left or have got fired or whatever you want the case may be, I'm kind of curious to see how it does perform, right? Because I get from what I understand, it still looks exactly the same. So then I kind of begs the question: so what were all these people who were there doing? Because if they've lost over half the staff and the interface is still the same, people can still tweet, people can do whatever. Maybe it's something we're not just seeing, that's the thing, because I don't use it, the tool. What do you
It's
think?
yeah, it's very normal with like with any company, you look at the core team, right? Like core team of engineers, and there is a research and development team, there's marketing, there's sales. A lot of these people, I think he mistakenly fired some of those core team too. But as long as the core team is there, the rest of them, it can be automated, right? Like the spam checkers, right? You can have an AI that's doing that, right? All this person is probably doing is just looking at the check marks and print a report end of the day and it's done, right?
Yeah, and then I think I'm sure you heard, the news as well that I think Apple is apparently trying to take Twitter off of the Apple platform, and Elon says, "Oh, I might just build my own phone." So, I mean, you can say what you want about Elon. He's actually sent people to space. He helped generate the actual electric car that's now the trend that everyone wants to go to. And if he wants to do something, I wouldn't put it past him that he can probably do it. Now, will it be
Yeah,
as good as the Apple phones or the Androids or the Samsung, whatever? Who's to know? Because I'm sure each of them has their unique challenges on how to build things. But I feel like he's a builder, so if he wants to build something, he'll find a way. So
yeah, it's like the mad scientist, right? Like
yeah,
create things like with Apple, like they have the cash, and that's what really floating the company right now. Like ever since Steve Jobs is gone, there I don't see the same kind of innovation anymore. It's just the same repackage, same repackage, and their focus is shifted more onto the software development and how to use it effectively. But it's a long game, you know.
it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so back to ROI here, and we talked about your social media. Now we're not a social media podcast, but how important is the social media that you guys currently use for your business?
It depends, right? You have to be where your clients are, right? Like I was on all platforms and tested what's really working, what's not. And for B2B, LinkedIn is great, right? But if you're in a business that's facing consumers, then Instagram and Facebook is great. And if you're strictly focusing on people that are ready to buy your product, Google is right. So it's all about recognizing what's important, but just how the presence, right? Like I wouldn't like it if somebody takes off my Twitter handle and creates an Instagram account with that and then realize that I can't have it when somebody else posting something that I don't agree with or meet my expectations. It's at the end of the day, people just look at the handle. Is it the same guy, right? Like it creates that confusion. So I suggest all business should be on all these platforms, but pick one or two that's really relevant for the customers, and they have to do their own research and combination research, right?
Yeah.
If somebody's running a restaurant and other restaurants are doing really well on Facebook and on Instagram for branding, then you had to be there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're going to move on to the actual industry here. So, in your opinion, VK, what is the state of the digital marketing industry, and where do you think it's going right now?
Oh, I have seen it. Like, um, I started my first like freelancing, you call it. It used to be Rommel Group Limited. I just created Lakkenini.com at the time and reselling products for other companies and really optimizing my site. So, at some point my website was ranking like number one for Buy iPhone UK, and Apple is number two, right? So I learned a lot of things over the years, and that was the beginning. And now a lot of these things has been changed in terms of how Google looks at a website and what kind of schemas they're using, and how they're automating a lot of these processes using AI and not the real people looking anything, right? So from switching something manual and evolving into more human form of understanding what the website is, right? When Google wants, crawls a website, basically they're looking at what is the user experience here? Like how does users navigate on this website? So it's all built for users than the bots, right?
Mhm.
And then when it comes to advertising platforms on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, they're all new platforms. But one thing that I have consistently seen is the span of each platform is getting less and less, right? Like MySpace lasted longer, right? And
I
then,
remember MySpace. Yeah.
yeah, and then Facebook, and then, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. But TikTok gained way more traction in a way short period compared to any other platform in the past. So the speed of things that are happening is way quicker than, okay, I can wait a year before I can get on one of these platforms. It might be too late, right? And there are a couple of other new platforms like Clubhouse and, how do you share your voice, right? Like, and there are other platforms that are tied to crypto and Bitcoin and monetized in a Web3 environment. So the industry keeps evolving and taking new forms, but also getting fragmented to a different type of mediums, right? Like people who like to watch videos versus who just likes to listen to audiobooks and who just want to read a book. So the platforms are getting fragmented, and we just never know. Like with when the Neuralink comes out, it might be totally new.
Well,
I don't
apparently, well, the funny thing you talked about, VK, is that, apparently to young people, Facebook is for dinosaurs, right? So, I mean, I still use it because I guess it was popular when I was using it. And the funny thing is, I sell a lot of my stuff through Facebook Marketplace, so I still utilize it. I don't really post anything on Facebook. I think the only time I might do it is the occasional kids' birthday photos, but
Mhm.
that's basically about it. You're not going to see me posting a lot. I know with Instagram, it's very visual, so I know to promote the podcast, I do a lot of promotion on that end. But I agree, LinkedIn is really good as well for the business to business because I've landed a few gigs through LinkedIn. Well,
Yeah,
currently, what I'm doing now, which is hosting or co-hosting the Jaybird Watching podcast that I do Tuesdays at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Shameless plug. And then, of course, doing some voiceover work for some other people as well. So it's kind of like it's interesting how you can find these things. So back to
yeah.
the industry here. So what part of the digital marketing space do people not really they misunderstand about it when they hear someone's a digital marketer? What do they normally think?
Um, there with the gig economy, it's easier to misinterpret like a graphic designer can be content specialist, which is not true. And a content specialist cannot be a graphic designer unless, you have that specialization. And a lot of businesses miss out looking at it, okay, I'm a marketer, but what kind of marketer are you? And how do you differentiate yourself, right? And small and medium business have no clue most often what they're signing up for. I'm paying $3,000 a month, and then all I'm getting is the Facebook and Instagram posts and the photos that I send to this agency, right? But how do you monetize that? How do you build a brand value? And the fundamentals of advertising and marketing hasn't been changed, right? Still the brand value, still the word of mouth, still building the trust, you're still building the integrity with the brand, and convince people to come and have the restaurant experience or buy a product from you. And those fundamentals, like if you look at any Ogilvy marketing books, they're all standard, right? Like the blueprint of any advertising marketing. Those hasn't been changed, but the platforms and the technology being used has been changed significantly.
Yeah, and just
So unless you know this core blueprint of whole industry, you can't really say Instagram is going to help you because all I know is graphic design, so I'm trying to sell the Instagram service, right? So just, I think businesses are learning somewhat now and, running these type of people, but that's the hard thing. And, I had multiple roles, right? Like being a programmer and a marketing strategist and, for my business operations and my own business. So I can see differently than somebody who's just doing one thing, right?
Right, right. Absolutely. So, all right. So, what I'd like to ask all my guests this: what has been your biggest failure, but also your biggest success running your business?
There are many failures and successes. I can tell you right off the bat. I always believed in fail forward, right? Like you create a product, you experiment with it, you learn like a lot by doing, not just, on the paper. Like get your hands dirty by literally building the things that you want to. And I think, the two other companies that I had early exists and too early to the markets, um, you know, like back in 2009, 2010, we're literally building like augmented reality apps for automotive industry. And even now, it's still not mainstream, but it's there, right? Like you can use your iPhone to, use the LiDAR technology to really create the 3D models. But how do you use it effectively, right? Like the industry we're moving into is like called the VR. So we built certain tools around automotive industry that integrates with the websites, and that was way too early to the technology. And then Buddy Golf, other app, basically it helps you find fellow golfers, and it's a social community app rather than just a booking platform. And that idea was stolen by one big company that we had NDAs with and replicated everything that we had, even though there were NDAs and stuff, right? Um, Even though there are failures, I learned a lot. No matter how small it is, you want everything in writing, either trademark, copyrighted, and have some proof of that they're not going to step over you and just run with $30 million, right? So with the success, I think I always wanted to run my own business and I always wanted to have that freedom for my family and do other things in the community. And that's something, it doesn't come one day. It's like one step at a day, and there are bad days, there are good days. And that's something I look up to every single day because every day is grateful. And today, we're doing this podcast, and I'm like, by 7 a.m. this morning, my inbox was empty, and I'm like, great, right? It took me 4 to 7, like 3 hours just to clear my stuff. So I have rest of my day to focus on reading a book or, self-healing. So I do a lot of other things for personal growth too. So I think that's something you can't trade it with anything else, right? Like you're not bound by any rules and you have all the freedom to do whatever you want. And you have, I'm not super rich, but I have enough that I can have a comfortable living for myself and for my kids. So um, I'm very grateful that it happened over the last 10 years, even though there are, some hiccups. Uh, I think that's the biggest success I can relate to myself because it's kind of like hard work and you earn, it's kind of like a win after a tennis match, right? You feel good about it because you put your sweat and blood into it. And it's the same thing with life. And it's just not the business, like even in personal life too. I mentioned like I'm a very spiritual person. So I stay curious and I look at the ways how we can improve ourselves so that we can make a bigger difference for the people around us in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Great you're talking about like that. So, um, there's nothing much I can add to that. I mean, that's great to hear because I think what I want to make sure that people understand is the real stuff when it comes to this thing. So it's not just all the good things because I'm sure if we wanted to ask VK all the successes he has and we focus the entire episode on that, I'm sure it'll be fun, but at the same time, you're not getting the realistic picture because then if someone listens to that and be like, okay, I'm going to try to copy what VK does, and then suddenly I'm struggling, I'm not performing as well. Is VK full of it or what's going on? But the fact that he can actually explain, here is the stuff that you have to realize, both good and bad, so that it's actually, you have a really almost like a 360-degree picture of, all right, depending on whatever business I want to go to, I want to go in this direction. I got to be worried about certain things. I have to be careful of certain things. Otherwise, costs can go up, money comes down, and then now I'm unhappy, right? So trying to nip those in the bud helps a lot in that. So, all right, we're going to go from hey, do you need an error-free website? Do you need transcription that's accurate and on time? Would you like to remove noise from your video or audio recording? Do you need a spokesperson for your business? If so, we can help. At Northway Capital Group, we are happy to announce that we are now providing website testing services, audio transcriptions, and audio cleanup, as well as spokesperson services. We would love to help you on your next project. Contact us for more information at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com.
Now it's time for tips from the pro.
Tips from the pro segment here. So this is for people, VK, that actually want to get into the digital marketing space. So now you're the expert in that. So we're going to try to pick your brain on that. So question number one, in your opinion, is there any small profitable niches right now that someone who wants to start their own firm can get into? Because when people look at it, they can see all these people that are selling everything, SEOs and
Courses.
social media and courses. So is there a small niche that if someone wanted to start something that they can get some quick wins in?
I think everybody has different preferences. I'm sort of guy, more like old school. I want long-term stability and success rather than, I sold X amount of Amazon products and made some money, and then I had to figure out something else in the next 3 months, right? I think the mindset has to evolve in the sense it's okay to have multiple businesses and short-term gigs, but at least have one that has your bases covered. No matter what happens, this has the income for you, and then you can come back and focus to it, right? And with the selling courses and whatnot, I have seen more fake people that artificially inflates their wealth and show off to make people buy. I mean, even like look at Tai Lopez, right? Like, he never had that, but in every video for the first 1 year was showing off his villas and expensive cars and whatnot. And I don't know, like a lot of youngsters believe that something is okay to do, and in a way you're manipulating people to buy your course, which you haven't really lived through that life, right? I mean, now this guy, even though he hasn't had a real life experience, he read a lot of books, and after $200 million in a couple of years, yes, like now, you can see him. He went through his own journey and he has that expertise. So it's important to have that clarity in terms of, do I really want short-term gigs? And if there are the reasons, like, write down 1 to 4, and this long-term goals, like 1 to 4. But every small step that you take, it has to be attached with the long-term goals. And going back to the like Amazon Marketplace, BA sellers, everybody's doing that, and you're not building brand value, right? So you sell X amount of products, and then you made some money, and then you move on to the next product. But how do you build a brand around it so you are building a brand value even though you're selling third-party products? Look at Walmart, perfect example, right? Amazon itself selling third-party products, but Amazon has brand value. So how do you kind of position yourself and build that long-term business versus short-term things?
Yeah, it's some of those courses. I've seen some of those too that, he's selling products. I think they tried to rationalize it that having a service-based business is a lot more challenging because if you go away, the services go with you. But as opposed to a product particular company, people are always going to keep buying. So they almost kind of make it that it seems like it's more hands-off, right? It's more like, oh, okay, yeah, just pick some products, try to get the first seller list, and then that's it. And it's very alluring to the people that maybe not have that entrepreneurial spirit. They might think, oh, I can make 4 figures a month extra aside from my day job. Why not, right?
Yeah, some people do, and I think it's just the easiest thing to do, right? Like I have done like Amazon Marketplace and sold my products. I have done all these drop shipping through, printing t-shirts and whatnot. Everything has its own advantages and limitations, but at the end of the day, on a long-term basis, the amount of time that goes into to build this in the initial couple of years is not worth my time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to services, there is the other challenge. You have to continuously innovate and improve yourself, and you are offering a service, so you have to put your time into it. And when it comes to, I think, our industry, digital marketing here, there are a lot of tools now, right? Like for video production to voiceovers and whatnot. And that's kind of like the next level. But not everybody can afford it. But behind all of this, you still need a person who understands the business brand and have a proper strategy around it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, next question here, how do you keep yourself educated or stay up to date in your digital marketing space? Like, do you have like magazine subscriptions or websites you go to, market intelligence reports, or do you have like mentors, or how do you stay on top of the industry?
So for both personal life, I go to 3 to 6 conferences a year. I learned it from somebody else or I read it in a book. Basically, some are professional industry conferences, some for personal development. So you balance it out. When you go to the conferences, you're learning something that's not even off the shelves yet, right? Like when Facebook or when I go to this Facebook conference, F8, um, you get to see and experience the products that's not even available in a year or two to the public. So you get that advantage on how to leverage that for your clients, right? And having a mentor on a regular basis at the personal level, this mentor can be not just business coach, but also, uh, you know, like a counselor, right? Like you have challenges and you can talk to somebody and you let that out and find clarity around it. You want to have some of these people. And with the books, I read all sorts of books, but mostly nonfiction. And there are different levels on how you run the business too. So it's kind of amazing how a $500,000 business can be so much different than $500 million business, but even the ground principles are exactly the same. And how do you have process and people around that? So how do you get there, right? That's like my intention to grow the agency. And I read about 20 books average a year, and that's just been very numb, like either audiobooks or something that I can just read laying down in the bed. Um, and at some point it becomes all the same, but the concepts explained through their own lenses and their own experiences. So some of these are just basic reminders. So as long as you get that core 90% good, and then the 10% is evolving technology and innovations, you will subscribe to all these podcasts and websites, right? Like a simple thing I would do is I have certain keywords I set up on Google Alerts, right? And every morning it lands in my inbox and I look at it, what's new with this, right? And there's some very specific newsletters from Social Media Examiner and also Peter Demandis from X Prize Foundation, like Future Loop. I think that's his newsletter. And it's learning at different levels. So Future Loop always has technologies that's at experimental stage. Think about SpaceX 14 years ago when these
Yeah.
guys are running like moonshots and still experimenting. Is that even possible, right? So you get to experience a lot of these things, right? Like, companies that are trying to make water out of thin air, these kind of things. Then when you look at industry specific ones, through Social Media Examiner or Mad Cuts, like all these, you get to know what's happening on hands in the industry that we may not be able to use for our clients, but just being aware of it.
Yeah, no, that's
So,
pretty good to hear, right? And let me
yeah.
get these last couple in here. I know I want to be cognizant of your time here. So, for what is the best billing practice for someone doing a digital marketing firm like yourself? Should it be something like a monthly retainer? Should it be billable by hour? Should it be by project? What would you suggest someone starting this out? What would be the best billing practice?
I have seen multiples, and I think most of the 20% marketing clients that we have, it's an ongoing year on year. And as long as you're doing a good job and have that trust and integrity with them, they're going to be your clients forever, right? Like most of these clients that I'm talking about, they're with us like 8, 9 years. So you want to build that trust with them. And with the way how you structure the package, you really want to be careful. You can take short-term projects or long-term projects, but how do you upcharge for short-term projects, right? So you're creating a brand package. You can get it for $500 in Fiverr, or you can spend like $50,000 on the brand package. But what kind of project do you want to take and set your standards high? if somebody comes to you, hey, can you do this for me? Like mostly family and friends that recommend you, especially in the early stages of starting a business. Do I really want to do that? Because it's giving me that experience and it's also provides me for my portfolio and I have the time. But as you grow, you wouldn't have the same time and you wouldn't take the same type of clients, right? Uh, and I still remember the days where we were taking like $2,000 website projects. Now, like we only take $10,000 plus clients, unless like, if it is a redesign or an existing client, then we kind of evaluate it case by case basis. So what type of client you work with, what kind of project, and then I think as a business, the bottom line has to be there. Like, are you making any profit and how short term it's going to be because it's going to help your cash flow. And at the same time, you are providing the best value possible for the client.
Oh,
And
that's
as long
great.
as you have both of that, can be short term, long term, it doesn't matter. And I personally felt doing short term, you can bring in more projects because you can charge $15,000 for a brand package for 3 months, and you can have an SEO clients for 6 months for the same money.
Interesting. No,
Yeah.
it's good to hear. Good to hear. All right, last question before we hit to the fun stuff and we wrap it up is what is your best advice to deal with, I guess, difficult clients and also maybe difficult staff?
It's you live and learn with a lot of these clients and employees. For employees, you can have a good HR person and look at the culture fit, and that avoids all sorts of headaches moving forward. And have a proper contract, right? Like, when my lawyer charged me $5,000 to have an employment contract or my client contracts, I spend that money because it's important for me to know that I'm covered in every way possible, both for my clients and employees, and you have to spend the money, right? I could have Googled it, downloaded it, and paid $100 to do this. It's not the same, right? So I invested some money to have proper documentation there for everybody to sign up. And dealing with the clients too, having, you have a presentation, you have a proposal, and make sure whatever the discussions are copied into the contract. Like, I don't use the word contract, even though I'm saying it. It's an agreement. Like I tell my client, okay, this is what we discussed. I'm going to send you the agreement for you to sign up. That includes the services provided exactly. And if it is an app or website, you will include the technical documentation of the process and what exactly it's going to do and how much you're charging for it and what are the terms and what happens if that's not paid and who is paying for the long-term maintenance of some long-term plugins that you have to buy, right? With the WordPress sites that we do. And just having the clarity around. And I think sometimes clients still come back and say, no, that is not what I want. I wanted to do it this way. And you give them the best, right? Like I want all my bookings going to my Google Calendar. It's great, but you don't have a G Suite account. So you need to set that up. Like, so there's an extra step there that we haven't talked about, right? So how do you give them what they want? Sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, like always, you look at like customers, right, and go that extra mile to help them out. And sometimes, like, we didn't make any money on the projects, but as long as they're happy, especially in the initial stages, you want the customer to be happy and you're doing everything you can to avoid that confrontation, but you can't please everybody, right?
Yeah, like I know a lot of small businesses that I talk to, a lot of them almost do like a pre-screening of potential
Mm-hmm.
clients, right? So, the client can be waving money, but like, let's find out if this is a great fit, right? Because it's easier to get to stop it right then and there and maybe, yeah, no bother, let's start the business together versus taking the money and they're a pain in the butt of a client to be with, where you start dreading that call or that email or that Monday morning where you're going to have to speak to them, right? And that's not what we got into business for, right?
Yeah, everybody has different expectations, right? There are clients that expect you to reply within 5 minutes to some clients that want you to do all the work, like even though you needed that keywords that they want to focus on, right? So it's just setting those boundaries. And I think Like when we acquire the clients, okay, we make sure they had the money to spend, and this is the amount that really gets them the results, and anything under won't really help them. And you tell them straight up front, I'm afraid that, unless you spend this much money, you're not going to see a huge difference in your business. And they go somewhere else and spend that pennies, but they never see the results. It's just kind of getting the advertising spend in the drain. And with some clients, you can see the expectations. Okay, I want you to do this research. I want to come up with this strategy on how you sell your product. That's not our job. Like, you have a product, you have a team that really did all this business analysis to come up with a product, then we know how to market it. Like, it's not our job to really see if there's a demand for that cheap product or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's all about like setting the boundaries and knowing, and I think it all comes from the experience as you work through some, difficult clients.
Absolutely. So,
Hey you, do you need a voiceover? Well, look no farther. Northway Capital Group has your answer. Commercials and explainer videos, AVR and voicemail, health and wellness, corporate training and e-learning, announcements, documentaries, and biography. Contact us on social media or email us at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com. Now it's time for the rapid fire round.
all right, let's finish this off with a rapid fire round. This is more just of the fun questions, more relaxed of all the serious stuff that we talked about in the entire episode. So, VK, here we go. Question number 1. I asked this to all my guests. If there was a sandwich named after you, what would be on it and what would you call it?
Can you repeat again?
If there was a sandwich named after you, what would be in
Sandwich.
it? Yeah,
I heard sandwich, and I'm like, did I hear it right?
that's right.
I don't know. I'm not a great sandwich person, but I will just call it uh, Mr. Beast alternative.
Mr. B. Johnson. What's in it, though? What's in it?
uh, it would be, something like some protein, some greens and whatnot, right? It has to be good for the body. But you always want to have that marketing gimmick. I mean, right? Like,
Yeah,
Mr. Beast is selling this burger, so Mr. Beast alternative,
Mr.
right?
B. Johnson. Well, who has a hard time with that question, VK? Anyone in the food service that I've had a few chefs on, and the minute I ask them that question, that almost takes up like 5-10 minutes of the conversation because they're so specialized in it that they're just like the brain
Yeah,
is
they know
going
so
like
much.
they know so much, and I'm thinking a lot of people are like, oh, ham, mustard, mayo, some lettuce on a bagel. That's it. And we'll call it something else. So, all right, next question here. What word or phrase do you most overuse?
Apart from us and thems, I think like compassion. I use that quite often because
Like, being compassionate about ourselves, right? It's part of the self-care, but also compassionate about the people around you. And it's all based around mindset and mental wellness.
Nice. All right. All right, next question here. What is something that most people are obsessed with that you just don't get?
Definitely materialistic things. I can't still justify going there spending like $10,000 for a purse and show that social status. I mean, I don't understand like people still trying to please, like you're in your 40s and you're very successful. What do you worry about really, like the personal image and whatnot, right? Because that's
Yeah.
you're still trying to prove something, there and I usually see that unhealed trauma, right? Like during my childhood I want to impress my parents, whatever, right? I want to get that attention and do that. But once you're grown up, once you're mature enough and seeing all these things, like, is it really worth it?
Yeah, I saw this one profile. I can't remember the name of it, but this person was showing off. I think it was her $1,500 flip flops. I never understood that for flip flops. I mean, you could go to Old Navy and get them for like $5, and I'm sure they're just as comfortable. But I never understood that. I'm still slow on trying to understand TikTok. My daughter does a lot of TikTok dances and stuff, and I'm thinking, how long is this dance that you have to do? Oh,
Yeah.
like 5 seconds. And I'm thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do that from a business perspective to get a 5 seconds. And then, because then I asked her, VK, oh, do you want to take like dance class or something? Because thinking that might pique her interest. She's like,
Yeah.
no. Like she'll watch someone do the TikTok dance and she'll do herself doing the exact TikTok dance that is. And she's content with that. She doesn't want to go do a class and learn some cool things. It's more like, no, it's on demand. I think just this generation is an on-demand generation. And they're like, yep, I want to do that specific dance.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do.
TikTok is like more like edutainment, right? There is education and entertainment.
Yeah.
I do spend quite a bit of time on TikTok, but all my feed is about stocks, something that I'm learning. Sometimes I don't even see that stuff on Twitter or any other platforms. So I really like the AI, the algorithm behind TikTok that really knows what you want and pushes that content.
Yeah, I know she's trying to get me on TikTok. I'm like, I don't know how I can do my podcast for TikTok unless it's like a 5-second clip of me saying rapid fire round, and then that's it. That's a TikTok thing, and I'm like, that's it. I only have 5 or 10 seconds.
There is,
I'm like, oh boy, maybe I just
there is a TikTok. I think it's called Gen XRP. It's dad and daughter. He's an investor, so he doesn't really dance and old school, but old school in a good way when I say that. Lots of experience, and basically his daughter asks a question like, Dad, what do you think about the crypto today? Like, what is the news today, right? So they build a channel really good. So it's not everybody, but there are very specific people that like that channel.
Yeah. All right. Last 2 questions and we'll call it a day there, my friend. Would you rather go 30 days without your phone or a lifetime without dessert?
I'm in technology, so definitely I'll pick the phone and give up the dessert.
You know what? You're like a lot. I've talked to a few digital marketers in the past, and the last one, Brian, he called me the devil and he called me evil because he loves his desserts, but he also is like yourself, a digital marketer who lives off who needs the phone, right? And I tried to make it easier for him. I said, a tablet can still be used. I just said a phone, so you could use your tablet, right? But he was still upset. He's like, no, how dare you do without the desserts and all that sort of stuff. So aside from
I love desserts too. I love desserts too, but and I think I spend more time on my phone than enjoying a dessert.
Well, I think a lot of people enjoyed the dessert part during the pandemic in the first part, which is why everyone's got to get rid of the COVID weight, right? So I think it'll be 10 years later, I'll be like, yep, I'm still trying to get off the COVID weight, right? So last thing here. Last question I asked to all my guests here. So what is your theme song, VK? So that song hits, you're walking down the street, people know VK's.
There are actually multiples, like Bryan Adams, Waking Up the Neighbors, and then Phil Collins. I think Cadbury's used that song in their advertisements as well. There's some songs like you just want to keep listening, right? But like Waking Up the Neighbors, I think it's just kind of really helped me to get out every morning, like during my school days.
Wow. I don't hear Bryan Adams very often, but I loved him in the 90s, and I think even in the 80s as well. Phil Collins, I think really great artist back then too. So it's there. So any last final thoughts, VK, any words of inspiration to this next generation of entrepreneurs that, that may be afraid to do something with this time?
I think like we're all entrepreneurs at some point in one way or other, but a lot of us don't realize that. And entrepreneurship is the great way to create that freedom. And when you look at long term, like you can retire 50 or 45 whenever you want, and you can travel. And I want everybody to try that entrepreneurship, whether you're into technology, whatever, find that niche and experiment with it and see how much you love, but have the passion behind it. And sometimes you don't have it, but always bring in other people, like partners in the business who can help you with the other things that you're missing. And it's kind of like strange. Like when I talk to some of my friends, or I coach other business owners, they say, oh, I don't think I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, So when you're a 15-year-old, did you ever negotiate with your mom, like getting that ice cream or a chocolate bar? That's exactly
Or those pair of shoes
That's
or
exactly
something.
what it
Yeah.
is, and how stubborn you are at the time trying to get what you want, and you have all these, not excuses but reasons to get that for you. And exactly same thing, how badly you want to solve a problem that's really helping the community or the other businesses, so that you can charge some money, and it all comes down to the service and negotiations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, where can people find you, VK, if they want to utilize your service? They want to reach
On
out
my
to you.
website, lakkineni.com, LAKKINENI.com, or my Instagram at VK Lakkineni, LAKKINENI.
Wow, that's great. So, thanks for being on the show, VK. That was
Thank
a
you,
lot of
Ken.
fun.
Really appreciate you, my man.
Thank you for listening to the S.M.E Stories podcast, which is owned by Northway Capital Group. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Northway Capital Group.